So I understand you're here in Europe trying to raise money, more money for the World Food Program to combat famine, primarily in Africa right now. What sort of response are you getting from Europe's leaders?
Well, it's been tremendous. It really has. But the need is greater than any time period in world history. We're facing the worst humanitarian crisis since World War II. Just last year, we were feeding about 80 million people, but because of the man-made protracted conflicts, now the needs are up to 108 million. And we're looking at the 4 countries that are facing famine: Yemen, Nigeria, South Sudan, Somalia. Those 4 countries alone, if we do not receive the funds that we need, we're looking at 600,000 children, just children, dying over the next 4 months. So the needs are great. The European Union, Germany, has been stepping up. It's just been tremendous response, but the needs keep going up. We need to end these wars.
Okay, so the conflicts obviously need to be addressed that are behind, that are driving these humanitarian crises. In order for you to do what the World Food Program needs to do for those people who are so desperate right now, you need money. Almost $5 billion was pledged by a number of countries earlier this year, but that money simply hasn't materialized, at least not enough of it. Which countries have honored their pledges and which have not?
Well, Germany has stepped up in a big way. I mean, historically, Germany gave about $60 million on an annual basis. Now it's giving $800 to $900 million. Whether you're talking about Africa crisis or whether you're talking about the Syrian refugees and internally displaced people, but Germany has stepped up. Also, of which Germany is a major contributor into the EU funding, particularly for the Syrian refugees, whether they're in Turkey or Lebanon or inside Syria or Amman, Jordan or Iraq. The EU and Germany has really, they have, in fact, been great supporters and players. There are other countries, though, that could do more, in my opinion.
Including European countries?
Including European countries. France I think, could do more. They've been given about $30 million. They have the wealth. I'd like to see them do more. Saudi Arabia and the GCC states definitely
Gulf Cooperation Council.
Yeah. In my opinion, Yemen, because of Saudi Arabia's engagement in the Yemen war, they have the responsibility, I think, to bear the cost of the humanitarian crisis. In Yemen alone, we're feeding about half the people that need to be fed. And so children are literally on the brink of starvation there. It's a terrible situation.
You've mentioned 600,000 children in the coming months in Yemen, also South Sudan, Somalia, and Nigeria, northeastern Nigeria. They could die in the coming months due to malnutrition. How did the situation get to be this bad?
A combination of factors: man-made conflict, greed, corruption, and number 2, the lack of funding and the lack of funding at the appropriate time. This is why we are here, to thank Germany, number 1, and number 2, make the leadership a prize, working with them, understanding what their concerns are, what we see out there on the field, because we have men and women putting their lives in harm's way every day in the most difficult places in combat, whether it's ISIS or just general conflict between combatants. I have to put my hat, tip it for these courageous men and women.
Okay, let's look to the U.S. for a moment. U.S. President Donald Trump, he says that he wants to make cuts to humanitarian aid from the United States. You've said that you're hopeful that his daughter, Ivanka, will help twist his arm and maybe get him to reverse his proposals. Do you really think she can get him to change his mind?
Well, 3 things. You know, I've said many times before, watch more what Donald Trump does versus what Donald Trump says, because he postures a lot, like he did with NATO, and I think like he is doing with the United Nations. And every time that I have ever sat down with him and presented them the facts, and he analyzed, he usually makes the right decision. Now, we're not leaving any stone unturned. And Ivanka is an advisor within the White House. And I know I have 2 daughters, and we're playing every card we have, because as I have met with her, discussed the situation, apprising her, because I do believe that once the President of the United States, regardless of where he gets that information, once he's apprised of the reality of the facts, I believe that he will respond, and I do believe he'll provide a leadership role around the world, because it's in America's national security interest, as it is in Germany's, as it is in Europe, to fund these crises, because as I've said in the United States, if you want to spend another $500 billion on military operations, cut the World Food Program.
I think there are a lot of world leaders who would agree very much with your assessment, and who are also putting some money behind their words when it comes to convincing the new administration in the White House to continue to participate in multilateral commitments and bodies. What would you advise other countries to do in speaking with the new administration to help them work together?
Well, I think as the president is a new president and never held political office before, and he's a quick learner. And give him time, but be patient, but be persistent. Get to the point. Don't attack. As I've told my friends in the U.S., I said, because when they heard that the president was going to cut in the proposed budget, and the House and Senate makes the final decisions on these matters, I said, do not attack the president. Say very clearly that once the president is apprised of the facts and knows the information that he needs to know, he'll make the right decision.
David Beasley, thank you so much. David Beasley is Executive Director of the UN World Food Program. Thank you very much for being with us.